It's come to this. We're playing Full Circle. Might as well get it over with here. Then we can talk about what a disaster this campaign has been. Full Circle. Zerg Swarm. High orbit over the Protoss homeworld of Aiur.
You have done well, my Cerebrit. The Protoss can do nothing but flee before the onslaught of the swarm. But now you must assault one final site before our conquest is assured. Behold, there is a temple not far from here that lies upon ground most hallowed. Though I have borne witness to the passing of countless millennia, the temple which you must assault is older by far. For it was constructed by my creators, the Xel'Naga, and it marks the site where the Xel'Naga first set foot upon Aiur. The temple must be cleared, and the Kadaran crystal set in its place. Only then shall the way be made ready, for it is upon that ground alone that I may be manifest.
Of course, it's not really explained why the Kadaran crystal is necessary to manifest the Overmind on the ground. I think maybe it would have been beneficial for us to be introduced to a physical representation of the Overmind in the Zerg campaign. You don't really consider that when going back through the campaigns. But we actually don't see the Overmind at all. We only see his portrait. We don't see a Cerebrit even as a unit at all in the Zerg campaign. We only see that stuff in the Protoss campaign. I don't think this is like really an intentional thing, because then that would have been played up more, that we didn't even know what we looked like because it didn't matter or whatever. But it seems really odd to me looking at this now. I just look at it and I can't look at it because it's not there, right? So I'm really wondering why they decided to do what they decided to do there. I was just opening up the map folder in the background there to make sure that I have it at the ready for the editor review. But looking at this whole mission, the premise does not fit for an RTS, and this is where I feel like it's a different kind of lazy writing. The lazy writing we experienced with the Kerrigan missions were basically like something to do with overdramatic, like I called it anime, but it's really just like really, really overdramatic shit, melodramatic even, where you can't take it seriously because it's taking itself too seriously. It's a hard thing for me to explain, partially because I haven't really fully thought about this kind of writing, because it doesn't fit with RTS, so I would never employ it myself. But there is some ground you cross where you start becoming pretentious. You stop becoming dramatic and thoughtful and start becoming pretentious and unbelievable. To the point where maybe it's some sort of uncanny valley of over-dramatization where no character that we could possibly relate to would really act in a certain way like Kerrigan does, or really say certain things like Kerrigan does. And obviously that similar kind of shit was happening with Zeratul, although he only had like one line or something. But then, of course, there was obviously Tassadar, who also was a little bit played up. And I think back to the briefing where it was the briefing of the mission where we were first introduced to the Reaver spam, and I went Mutalisks in the previous episode of this Let's Play. And in that briefing, Kerrigan talks to Tassadar, and Tassadar is like, we met before, and like has to basically exposit this because Tassadar didn't have a speaking role in the New Gettysburg mission. I mean, that's basic setup and payoff. The idea that you would set up Tassadar as a character instead of just introducing us to a proper noun called Tassadar in some of the text. I think I talked about this in the Terran campaign, but in the Terran campaign, we get told that Tassadar killed some stuff and extinguished the planet or whatever. But we don't even know who Tassadar is. Like, they just don't even explain it. He was supposed to have a point in one of the cut maps, biting the bullet. There's a point where he's supposed to introduce himself to Raynor, and him and Raynor are supposed to join forces to kill some Terrans. I think he spawns in as a carrier and has some scouts or something, so it's not really useful, but it's not even like he's an AI or an actual Protoss base or something that you would control at the same time as you control Terrans. There's nothing like that, but that was one of the cut missions, and clearly they did not adapt the script afterwards, which is why Tassadar never gets a speaking role, and is only basically our introduction to him is through some text wall. And this is significant because Tassadar was the commander of the Protoss force that we fought the one time we fought Protoss in the Terran campaign. And Kerrigan was obviously the commander of that local force of Terrans that we were commanding as well. I mean, this is another reason why it's like the Magistrate itself, the player character, the viewport is eventually just becomes redundant, because why do we need Kerrigan commanding if the Magistrate can command it? Kerrigan obviously doesn't offer anything of her own volition. That she's not impactful as a unit, so it's not like we need her there. So that's where, like, clearly the story is not in, you know, in motion, in sync with the gameplay there. But the fact that Tassadar doesn't actually have a speaking role, and we don't establish that Tassadar is a real character with any sort of personality, and his first speaking role is in the Zerg campaign, that's why Tassadar has to say, we met before, Kerrigan. You know, don't you remember when you fought Protoss in that one time when you were still human? That's when they met. And that has to be exposited, not for Kerrigan's sake, but for the player's sake. And Kerrigan is immediately then like, oh yeah, well, I think you seem weaker than you were before. But how would she, like, if she recognized the person based on, like, in any capacity, then she would know, oh, this is the guy I met before, and she wouldn't address them as a generic Protoss commander and then need to be reminded. So clearly she already knows. It's one of those as you know things where it's a line that's for the audience to enjoy or to understand or to take in. Fan service is often like this as well, where, you know, you say something and it really only holds significance for the people watching and not for the characters that are in the room. That's one of those lines from Tassadar where he introduces himself as a character that you've already met. And that's one of those things that is obviously very lackluster in this campaign, is that there's a lot of dialogue that's only written there to either contradict stuff accidentally or to, you know, basically, again, tell the player the story instead of showing them the player the story and allowing them to interpret it and reverse engineer where they are based on context clues and other things that you actually want players to have to do in your story, because that would mean that they, in order to understand their story properly, they have to be engaged. They have to actually be paying attention. So that's a desirable outcome. But Blizzard didn't get that. Now, the reason why this is significant in the context of the Overmind discussion is this is lazy writing of a different accord. We're not over dramatic. We're not brain dead with our exposition, although we are expositing certain things like the Zelnogans, so this is the first time we're hearing of that. But the way that the Overmind is doing this is he's stating facts without demonstrating them. So it's a different kind of telling the story instead of showing the story. In this kind of situation, it's basically trivia, but it's trivia that informs the entire premise of the mission. It's trivia like, you need to put a Kadaran crystal power-up in this area after killing a temple so that I can land on the Force, like on the planet or whatever. And that would be one thing. Like, I don't think the Kadaran crystals should have even entered into the sphere. I think they were a weird MacGuffin that had nothing to do with it. Really, the invasion of Aiur should have been about invading Aiur, making landfall, smashing everything. And then you could have said, hey, now that we've made a beachhead, the Overmind needs to land, so we need to secure a large area, and in order, maybe the temple is throwing out fucking energy that stops the Overmind from landing, or could endanger the Overmind, we'll say. And that's something that we need to clear the way for. Imagine some situation like that. Well, then maybe the Overmind lands and it's an AI ally and it helps you out after you destroy the temple. It's like you're clearing the way for a really badass AI ally. And in doing so, obviously, just, you know, dismantling one of the AI enemies as well. That is suddenly an RTS mission and not some weird back-end, like, over-dramatic and or lazy mission writing that has nothing to do with an RTS. Like, moving a fucking drone to a location for any reason other than expanding or mining or building something, like, that has nothing to do with an RTS. We're already creating abstractions on the gameplay for the sake of being you know, canon to the story. So I don't know why the Kadaran crystals needed to be there. I don't think they did. They don't really justify themselves. The Overmind just says we need them because. And so it's circular justification for what is in essence a MacGuffin, a plot device that doesn't actually serve much of a purpose unless you believe that they need to serve that purpose. And when you're writing something into a story, it needs to justify itself not only within the laws of the universe, like, oh, the Overmind actually does need this within this universe, and so that's what justifies it. It also needs to justify it within the point of your story. You need to be, like, everything needs to serve a purpose when it comes to the narrative, when it comes to what's actually happening in the plot, and when it comes to character development, and demonstrating some sort of craftsmanship when it comes to the story. So if you introduce something like a Kadaran crystal, it needs to have some sort of literary significance, for lack of a better term, some sort of payoff or some sort of, again, impact or significance that transcends what its literal purpose is in the story. So it's like I gotta have a literal purpose, a literal significance, but also a literary purpose that includes some aspect of the story, a narrative purpose, if you will. And of course, Kadar and crystals don't have that. That's why we consider them kind of like MacGuffins, except they're even worse than MacGuffins because they don't even bring characters together. It's literally just this fetch quest for this thing that you need. It's just, again, it's actually justifying a gimmick more than it's doing anything. So it's something that's in service to worse gameplay. And this is something that trips people up. I think because Blizzard did it, and people look to Blizzard and say, wow, their story crafting, it must be really good because they made the base game and I like the base game. Just this constructional element of the story being there at all, the Kadaran Crystal, and the fact that the temple just arbitrarily needs to be raised because it's ancient, I guess? Like, there's no justification for any of this stuff. It's obvious that the story does not hold up. It's obvious that the story is actually being made worse by the inclusion of some of these story mechanics or narrative elements. This is stuff that you could fix just by not having, less than 100 IQ, I guess. But again, I think that if you just made the temple a war machine or some sort of utility against the Overmind, then it's still specifically plot related, and it's still specifically related to some sort of narrative thing, and it's kind of abstract in the sense of it's not like the Overmind is a unit on the field that's taking damage from the temple, which even then would still be gimmicky, but at least there would be a gameplay representation of it. At the very least, though, it still acts as a sub-objective where the main objective is still killing everybody, but you've got to kill the temple in order for the Overmind to land. At least that would serve its purpose as a RTS mission objective that still is very non-standard and still very much linked to the story and to the narrative. And I think at that point you have the satisfaction of having something that isn't just melee gameplay, because you don't ever have to just destroy a temple. You don't have to destroy a structure to get an AI ally in melee. So you have some sort of non-standard gameplay element without sacrificing everything that makes an RTS. And obviously that seems to me like it would be a lot better, and I'm sure most people in my audience, since most of you guys are interested in RTS gameplay and not gimmicks, probably agree with that estimation. So now that I've rambled on for about 10 minutes about Zerg, hopefully you guys have a better appreciation for why I think this campaign was such a fucking mess, because half of it was in service to stupid shit like Kerrigan, and the other half was in service to this. So yeah, this is where it all leads. Destroy the Protoss Temple. I thought I started with another... Oh, just kill this. I always thought I started with another hatchery here, but I guess I am not a true man. Also, nice gas. We're gonna need another extractor, another hatchery, another man creator. So our first order of business really in this map is to kill Teal, who's on the borders. Mostly because he's got, I think it's not in this base, I think that one's fine. There's like a mineral only base that we can take over there to the right of our mineral line over here that allows us to get, well, obviously more mineral income, right? But the problem is, you're looking at a base that has cannons on it, just like Teal in the previous map. At least that's something that's relatively consistent, is that Teal has cannons on resources. It would be much better if he actually built the cannons in the middle of the game time instead of having them start with cannons. But at the very least, it's something. It's some sort of consistency. That we don't get otherwise, so... I guess that's what I get for scouting with weak-ass, fucking slow-ass Overlord. Go ahead and drop a pool. Okay, bye. Also, you don't even want to know how much pre-play shit is in this map. I don't fully know how much pre-play shit is in this map, but I know it's a lot, so... yeah. Still can't believe I had to kill one of my own structures just to get to the point where I could place a hatchery in a reasonable position. I guess it doesn't really matter that much, but it is going to be closer to all of these, like 4 or 5 mineral fields. So, I'll take it. Oh, I accidentally grabbed a man away from his duties. Grab an Evo chamber. Ooh, nice spin. That was a very epic twirl. I like that one. That guy's got my number if he needs me. Needs to have any backup at any point. Go ahead and grab another Evo chamber again, and then we'll grab a Hydra Den. We don't really need that gas anytime soon because we started out with 1,000 gas. So 1,000 gas. And I guess we'll go for layer tech afterwards, after we order up tier 1 Carapace. And I can finally start using drones from the leftmost hatchery. Isn't that exciting? I wonder why they insist on having so many different AI players. Like, when you look at the construction of a lot of the campaign missions, just you start listing off some of the attributes of them. It's really interesting to see, like, through lines between what everybody else does in a custom campaign environment. Like, they take so many cues from Blizzard in that regard. We are going to throw down a sunken over here because I do remember getting kissed. And then otherwise, obviously, we need an overlord now. But what I meant by drawing through lines between custom content and everything else was I just wanted to make the observation that it does seem like we all too often have... Hi. AI is not very smart, so I think we're fine here. Now the good thing is we have so many minerals from this particular area, so pretty confident in our ability to smash the enemy. Alright, I think we'll stop droning up for now and just go for some Hydras. And we don't have tier 2 missile yet, but we should get it pretty soon. You can come over here. Oh yeah, actually I do need more drones over in this section, and I can just transfer them over afterwards, so I'm not really that worried about overbuilding. The whole idea of having multiple players against one human, I think, is predicated on the idea that these players are individually insignificant or not powerful enough to kill the enemy. And it's a damn shame, because it certainly didn't have to be quite so brain dead in that respect. Like, it certainly could have been a lot more reasonable in the way that, like, you start to equate an AI player with a human player, but you don't even get to the point where you can think in those terms until way later, when, like, actual efforts to make functioning AI came around. Gonna grab some more drones, like I mentioned, and then we'll suppose we could definitely start over here. I will grab Hive Tech now, since I've got the tier 2 upgrades ordered up, and then I think I am going to get pneumatized, not because I'm worried about detection, but just so that I don't lose a bunch of overlords to some scout patrol. Another reason to build some more drones. And I will be smashing out teal pretty soon. Yeah, I think we're definitely looking strong over here as far as static D goes. I do need one more drone for the scouts over here. Look at these attacks, man. Alright, just smash that guy. I think we've overbuilt. What do we got here? Yeah, we already have range as well. Sorry, I don't think I'll ever require more minerals. Wow, I really fucking should have paid more attention to this attack because my Ultralisk just spun the entire time. At least we got the photon cannon and all those pre-placed zealots. Alright, go ahead and take... oh yeah, this is another AIDS base. I like how they just deliberately say, fuck you, man. Like, alright, whatever. Coming up on the... remember my upgrade advantage right now. I don't really have one, I guess. I thought I was more well upgraded than I actually was. Oh yeah, I need more gas now. That's why I started grabbing Zergling upgrades preemptively, because I knew that was going to happen. So even though they don't only have Carapace upgrades, it's still something. And I'll get melee upgrades pretty soon as well. AI tries to micro. By micro, I mean exist. Yellow's attacking me with... oh, the fuck? Excuse me, sir. AI just gave up and started attacking its own units. See you, nerd. Oh, I guess I should pull back with these. Well, we've successfully killed this guy anyway. Progress is progress. I need to re-drone over here. I mean, it's not really that bad because I have all of these, but... bring some of these guys back. My next 200 gas should probably be adrenal glands. Because it's unlikely that the Protoss will have enough armor upgrades for this to be a huge concern. And I guess I'll just go ahead and drop a base over here for the gas. Oh, did I actually drop this? Okay, cool. I thought I had more money, so when I saw that I was out, I was like, what the fuck? Adrenal. And we'll have tier 3 missiles soon, so that's good. I actually don't mind hearing that in campaigns because it's rare for me to ever need a crazy number of units. In Melee, it's a lot more... well, everything in Melee is a lot more. Literally anything, so... oh, okay, I guess we're carrying these zealots for, you know, no reason. Just saving them for later, you know? get pneumatized now. I can't believe that after introducing us to Dark Templar, they're just like, nah, you don't need to see him again. Again, the idea of introducing a unit that doesn't even get fucking trained is pretty strange to me. Melt that dude's shields, get him chewed up. Nice Nexus placement, dude. Like, when they place the Nexus so far away from the minerals, even though they could place it closer, it's even more ridiculous to me. And a drone over here, and one over there. Way ahead of you, buddy. And by that I mean was just about to do that, but you made me do it sooner. You fucking asshole. Alright, we'll start A-moving out in different directions. And we'll go ahead and get that man out. Oh, right. I'm supposed to grab some of this. 3 photon cannons protecting this psychotic, shitty base. I like how the shittier base is the one that needs protection, apparently. How goofy. I just want to see what's going on here. So red doesn't get activated unless you attack him, I'm pretty sure. Or until you kill the temple or something. It's something really stupid anyway. It's like another... Once again, they're just deciding not to activate man. Men need to be activated, okay? Oh, this is an epic base. Yeah, I would... Well, I can't even say I would be Muta's Dozen, but that's actually better than some of the bases Muta's Dozen has taken. That man's a fucking fraud and a half. Alright. It turns out I didn't need to engage with most of the tech tree, just Hydra Ling. Suppose that's fitting. Okay, you guys are still fucking with that? Transfer some men over there. Looks like they're fine. They're in control. Oof. I could grab an Ultra Cavern, I suppose. What does it see? Oh, it's you. C is available. I have literally the... I could just do C, and they made it... They deliberately made it you. You are responsible for this, man. Come over here. I guess my wall of men has not been successful yet, so I should probably mass up outside their door with more units and just go for one specific attack. I could try to do Niduses, I guess, too. Alright. I like how this base is apparently depleted anyway. What a fucking waste of my time. Couldn't even kill one. Nice unit. Alright, get us going. I mean, just to think that this is actually the last level. Listen, it's not my fault this guy's got fucking depleted gases. There's like some gimmick gas. Ah, I'll take a DK geyser. Alright, just bomb in there, man. Fuck it. Like, again, this AI is a lifeless fucking approximation of a player. Well, not even an approximation, but you know what I mean. Like, the idea that I could play this badly and still not only be, like, rewarded by winning, but claim decisive victory and clearly be the best player in the project, in the map, rather, is, sinful. Wait, was I even introduced to defilers in this? I think I just, like, get them at some point. Did I even have them in the previous mission? I didn't even check.
The Protoss have launched a final offensive to keep us from the ruins.
Keep us from the ruins! Dude, Daggeth didn't read his dialogue. It's supposed to say form. I guess I accidentally destroyed the temple. I didn't even get to show you guys what the graphic looked like. Well, you probably already know it if you're watching this. Just some brown shit. I feel like maybe it's in use later, but I'm not sure. Yeah, that final offensive is Red becoming alive. Just so you know. I think this also would have happened if I just walked in and said hi to him, but... GG.
Now shall the events set into motion so long ago be made complete. For the Protoss too were created by the Xel'Naga. They were the first creation, gifted with a purity of form, and we were the second creation, blessed with a purity of essence. Indeed, our two species are but opposite facets of a greater whole. Soon shall our two races be made as one. Thenceforth shall all feel the wrath of the eternal swarm, for the hour of judgment is come.
You know, you don't actually need to know that the Protoss or the Zerg were created by Xel'Naga. And what I mean by that is, it is completely inconsequential to the outcome of the map. It's inconsequential to the game. It has nothing to do with anything. It actually is irrelevant. You don't need to know that information because it's not pertinent to the gameplay. Now, obviously, there's a ton of information that's not exactly 100% pertinent to the gameplay that is like background world building. But the idea that you would, for one, pause the game and center view, even though I guess it's the end, whatever. But for another, just like exposit at great length this information that we don't need to know for... Like, it's not even important to the story itself, which is the biggest issue, but nor is it important to the gameplay. And yet we get... Blizzard takes great pains to interrupt the player's experience with their product and allow the story to catch up to the gameplay, for lack of a better term. That kind of analogy doesn't even work in this particular case because there wasn't really that much gameplay. We were just fighting against 3 brain-dead men. And I just look at this and all I can think are like it seems to me that Blizzard thought the player should, even if they, regardless of whether or not they do, that the player should care about their epic story and their epic characters. And so they prized that. They placed their presentation of those attributes, those elements, above the gameplay. And this is something that, again, I feel was passed on to the custom content community. The people who decided, I'm going to use Star Edit or SEM Draft or whatever to make my own custom campaigns, and I'm going to try to make maps that can be as good as Blizzard or better. You don't see too many people aspiring to be better, which is pretty sad, but I think this is probably something that rubbed off on the general player base. The idea that you can center view and pause and do all this shit to yank control away from the player. Sometimes without even pausing, you'll center view. Like, you don't even... There's not even a functionality, and Blizzard could have done this to sort of absolve it, even though it would have been pretty bad anyway, because it's still pausing. But you could have at least paused the game, center view to something, have a dialogue event, and then center view... Like, save the screen position that you were in before you center viewed, so that you could then center view back to that. It would still be really stupid and annoying. It would still interrupt gameplay, but it would be something a little bit more involved than... you know, a little bit more fair to the player, perhaps considerate of the player, to when compared to what they actually did was just fucking center view and sometimes not even pause, so that you just could be in the middle of battle and suddenly you're halfway across the map because XD. And that's one of those things that, like, it's a very obvious example of people trying to play the game and then getting interrupted. And that's what dialogue events do anyway. That's why I said you got to make sure your dialogue events are short, immediately understandable. Like, you almost have to rely, not exactly on cliches, but stuff that's easily relatable or easily digestible in the middle of a mission. It's got to be gameplay pertinent information that the player can internalize, and almost the same way that you might internalize something that co-op partner voice comms over Discord or whatever the fuck you're using for voice comms. If you happen to be playing like a 4v4 game and then your allies are all starting to expand and scout or whatever, and somebody says like, oh, there's a Terran going this, like, try to conceptualize it almost like that, because that's how players can handle it. We know players can handle that kind of comms, and we know that their communication, when it's done well, actually improves the gameplay as opposed to detracting from it. Now, meanwhile, if you had one of your allies calm the backstory to their fucking life, and then the other ally talked about his dad, and then the other ally talked about her fucking past experience with meth, like, none of this shit has anything to do with the game, so why are we taking attention away from the gameplay? Blizzard did it even worse by center viewing and, like, actually taking screen control away from the player, and then oftentimes just pausing it entirely. Anytime a game pauses or otherwise interrupts gameplay, it's very obvious that they don't give a shit about the player playing the game. In that moment, they have thrown out any credit that they could have possibly built up until that point. And it sounds extreme for people who are not already convinced of this idea, but you have to take a zero tolerance policy to this shit, because what this leads to is cutscene games that like Half-Life or whatever, where shit's like, in that game, there's one cutscene where you have no control over yourself, but people say, oh, it's great that they had interactive cutscenes. All you can do in those cutscenes is move around. I mean, even in the quote-unquote normal gameplay, you're still, like, running through vents and shooting at, like, one dude at a time or whatever. So it's not even real gameplay even when you're dealing with the normal gameplay, which is very much like Starcraft in this case. Like, even when we're not dealing with gimmick gameplay, we're still slogging through a bunch of pre-play shit. The enemy is only not killing us because of their poor programming, or they're literally designed to be pushovers, right? And this is something that they could have changed if they just conceptualized the AI like a human player, like I was talking about earlier, instead of conceptualizing them as this fucking time constraint, this blockade meant to force players to play the map for X amount of time, or whatever. Anyway, blabbering and ranting aside, we can take a look at the map. So let's do that, I guess. So I'm at the start location for the human player, and as you can see, I'm a little zoomed out now. We do have a shot of all of the different shitty ways that they decided to fuck you. Look how close my hatchery could have been if those trees weren't there. Both of those trees blocking, by the way. You can only build your hatchery either here or here, and again, the drone's well within range of the photon cannons. Should we even bother? Oh, man, we shouldn't bother. I wonder if this actually screwed up my mineral pathing. I didn't pay attention. But since this mineral field is assigned to this town, we're now dealing with a situation where at least AI would never mine from this mineral field if they had a base in this town, right? But I don't know if this also fucks the pathfinding of human-controlled workers, because I had an issue like this in the last, or the penultimate mission of Inconsummate. There was like a random mineral field that was assigned to its own town. I think because it had a height difference or something, and I didn't yet know about that. That's obviously a problem. I don't know if there's... I imagine there weren't really any other issues. Just... Good God. Yeah, here's a Muta's dozen base. I still can't believe that that was a real base, though. That's insane. Practically copy-pasted over there. By the way, I don't even think you can copy-paste in Star Edit. It's pretty funny. In case you wanted to have one more reason to ignore that program. Wow. Wow. Holy inaccessible mineral fields. Now, I think I've already counted this before. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's 13 inaccessible mineral fields. And again, just if you wanted to have some information about this. Yep. So either this player gets... Oh, so this player only activates when they lose a unit or when a temple, the temple dies. When there are no temples. Imagine that. Imagine the AI not even turning on unless they lost a unit. Conceptually speaking, I could have just like floated a bunch of mutas and guardians or whatever, and their first unit that they would have sat here and lost, for one, I would have seen their 3 starting probes and their fact that they were idle. For another, I could have just like bombed their nexus and killed that. Not that it would have mattered, because again, they have all the money in the world, but the idea that that could be a real thing that you could do is just hilarious. I guess the layout is not completely terrible because it does have quite a bit of open areas, but Blizzard never actually adds expansions to their maps because they don't value the player's time, and so you're pretty much just stuck with whatever you got in your neck of the woods. So that's why I ended up taking the teal bases. I actually took both teal bases before I even really fully saturated this. I guess this map actually had the most expansions out of any of them, out of any of the Zerg maps. But this map was also the worst map when it came to the actual quality of those expansions, I think. There were some outliers in the previous maps, like the 4th Zerg mission and the 6th Zerg mission, respectively. Both had terrible layouts in one of the bases each. But this one has terrible layouts in almost every base. Like, this one was pretty terrible just because of the distance between the gas and the minerals. Reminds me of the 2nd Terran mission. Not, well, I guess it's the 3rd. It's the one before Desperate Alliance. If you count the tutorial as the first one, it's the 3rd. But then you've got this, which is just shit. You got this, which has trees in it. You got this, which is... Oh, I guess this is probably the best one in the entire map. You got this where you need 3 hatches just to be fucking optimal. You got a fucking DK geyser. You got this mess. You got this. And you got this. Nice expansions. Then you got double gas, no minerals. And then you got this, which has 1 inaccessible mineral field, but still, that's sinful. And then you got this, which is 13 inaccessible mineral fields, so good fucking luck, man. I wonder if maybe the reason why they never noticed the inaccessible mineral fields is because, like the AI, they also only built 3 workers. I suppose that is a possibility. But then it just obviously demonstrates Blizzard doesn't know how to play their own game. I think when you learn how to play the game at a remotely high level, especially if you get used to melee map design conventions, it becomes obvious where you need to change stuff up. I think you can be less restrictive in your mineral layouts and more free-form, I guess, than melee maps. But they need to be somewhat reasonable so that you can mine optimally from minerals and optimally from gas, or relatively speaking, optimally. Like, I don't think you should have to put more than 4 drones or 4 workers on gas ever. And even 4 by itself, like, the number of bases where you have to put 4 workers on gas should probably be pretty low. That's a lot of wasted supply just to make up for the fact that the map itself doesn't offer you the ability to play optimally. So it's obviously a balancing act in that respect, but certainly could have been better in this particular case. Oh boy, could it have been better. And of course, the lack of north-facing ramps, the lack of AI that isn't just a pre-placed slog, They actually have a half-decent environment going over here, I think, even though it still feels a little low detail for me, and there's a lot of repeating tiles that are like right next to each other that they didn't bother trying to diversify. Like, this is something that's pretty basic and intuitive when you look at it, but I guess I don't really blame them for not doing it aggressively, because you can't copy-paste terrain and start it, so it's even more annoying than normal. Like, SEM draft is already kind of annoying, but at least you can copy-paste it. Like, it's just annoying on the count of the way that the tiles work, not really annoying on the count of SEM draft, but... Like, look at all this shit. Like, nobody wants to look at stuff that's like this, you know what I mean? You really want to... Like, you've got something that works as like a basic idea, but you got to expand out from here. You got to do more than that. So anyway, I guess that's pretty much it. I don't have much else to say on the map. I know it is a larger map than some of the other maps. Oh, I do have one more thing to say. So keep in mind that, you know, there's like water over here and so on and so forth. And a temple looks like this in this area. Now, this is actually the same place that the Overmind is at in the final Protoss mission. So if you remember that mission, keep that in mind. Consider the idea that you are you are staring down the barrel of a map that is so completely removed from the map layout of that mission that, like, yeah, okay, he made a giant crater, but I really don't think it would have resulted in completely changing the map. I think it would have changed a lot about the areas immediately surrounding it. But the idea that you remove all of the water and temple and you don't leave any of that behind, there's not even any fucking ruins anywhere to make it seem like you actually tried, even though we know that you didn't. Well, we'll get to that when we get to that particular map, but what a fucking mess. All right, time to watch the cutscene. Orbit. Protoss, homeworld Aiur. You know, you don't mean Dominion border world Aiur? You sure? Void. I like how those trees looked nothing like Aiur trees, by the way. I mean, they made the models. This was not a shot that was thought out very well lighting-wise. Definitely shows the age of those models. It also looked like there was some pop in there. I don't know what the fuck was going on. Well, there you go. That's the Zerg campaign. So I was thinking a little bit more about some of the reflection that I had there at the end of the campaign itself, at the end of the last mission, I should say. And I do think that the Overmind's big reveal being in a cutscene sort of tempers the issue that you might have looking at the fact that you don't see it in-game until the Protoss campaign, but my issue with cutscenes generally is that, especially in this game where they're completely inconsistent with what they show visually versus what you see in game, like they're showing different units or weapons that don't exist or whatever. The issue I have is that I can't interact with a cutscene, so it feels a lot less impactful to be introduced to something through that. I can see where it might be thematic, or it might even be appropriate for a story, but the idea that like a cutscene showcasing the Overmind probably should have been the opening cutscene to the Zerg campaign. Now, if you remember at the beginning of the Zerg campaign back in the 3rd episode of this playthrough, I talked about how cutscenes should probably have been used as intro and outro as opposed to having all that shit in the middle, especially since it probably would have encouraged them to be a bit more choosy with what kind of dialogue they ended up providing in the briefings themselves. because you don't want the briefings to get too ballooned in terms of length, although Brood War does have some like 5-6 minute long briefings, which is pretty insane. But you don't want them to be too long, you don't want them to be too involved, you want them to be mission specific, and hopefully that would have encouraged them to be a little bit more intelligent, because that would have limited them on what they could have actually shown as far as story elements. And in this particular case, I think it's better to have opening and closing cutscenes. I think that's one of the other advantages of it. Obviously, you can have as many cutscenes as you want if you do them well, but considering file size limitations of the time, plus Blizzard's incompetence when it comes to writing, I think that would have been a better position to make use of the tools that they did have to tell a better story. That being said, if that was the opening cutscene, the idea that the Overmind exists and like showcasing the Overmind itself, I think that would have been a lot better as a way to introduce you to the race. Like maybe it could have been the birth of the Cerebrate that we actually are. It could have been the opening cutscene, and so we show the Overmind exerting will in some capacity. I don't know how you would do that. There's plenty of different ways you could, but having that be the opening cutscene introduces us to the Overmind visually in a 3D space, and then allows us to see the two-dimensional representation of him maybe earlier in the campaign, so that we have like an in-game unit to the cutscene representation immediately, instead of it being a vague cutscene representation at the end of the campaign and then waiting all the way until the final mission of the Protoss campaign to actually see an in-game representation of it. By that point, the connection may not actually be created, even if we click on the unit and it says Zerg Overmind. So that would have been one of the ways that you could have fix that issue. And I think that there's something to be said for a better method of telling a story like this, or showing the player what's going on. I think that making the characters involved, like Zaz and Dagath, be a bit more impactful. Like if you lead with them, it's basic story writing that whatever you're opening with is, for one, meant to catch the player's interest or catch the audience to the point where it's like a hook, right? That's a basic idea. That happens in music as well. Like you're musically speaking, you're supposed to hook people in at the beginning, or that like give them some sort of inclination as to what's to come. And there's times and places where this can be avoided or subverted, but that's a fairly obvious and common design custom. You take away from that, I think you look at the idea that the Zerg campaign doesn't actually have characters besides Kerrigan that mean anything. They would have benefited from leading with Cerebrate characterization, Overmind characterization, and then sticking with that and following them entirely, instead of subverting the Zerg campaign, where we think we're going to be exploring the identity of these aliens and how they're this giant superorganism or whatever the fuck they're supposed to be in Blizzard land. The idea that we're looking through them, through their eyes, and seeing what they see and experiencing what they're experiencing, is a lot more compelling to me, and I think to most people who spent most of the Terran campaign fighting the Zerg, than dealing with some infested Terran shit. Like, exploring infestation probably should have been saved for a side campaign, or maybe something in the expansion pack, but it certainly doesn't justify the entire main Zerg campaign. Like, I don't see how you get that at all. That seems very strange. Having sat down the Zerg campaign, I definitely feel like the maps there were much more grindy. I think it's demonstrated by the fact that it took me longer to beat the maps. I am probably worse at Zerg than Terran, but at the same time, I don't think it's by so much of a margin that it needed an extra, 30 minutes or whatever whatever the game time was of the Overmind, or that last mission rather. I don't think I needed an extra half hour on top of what the playthrough of the Terran campaign was. I guess maybe some of the missions were less cheesable, so maybe that contributed to it. But I just feel like my fundamentals were not tested, in the sense that I was pushed to the brink of losing by a competent enemy player. That definitely didn't happen. What happened was there was just a bunch of pre-placed reavers and shit that I had to grind through. And it was basically saying, you can't progress until you clear all this shit. Passing note, closing note on the Zerg campaign. I said this in the description of the previous video, the 4th episode, but the fact that they killed Zaz off just in a brain dead manner, like the way that they did, is so hilarious to me, and also very disappointing. Zaz is pretty much the only character to talk back to Kerrigan, and that automatically makes him a cool guy because he doesn't take no shit, and Kerrigan is definitely shit. So it was nice to have a character that was trying to be some sort of voice of reason, even though his dialogue was kind of cringy at the end, where he says that you'll be the doom of us all or whatever. It's, again, very melodramatic. And it's almost like Bring Your Kid to Work Day wrote all of the fucking Kerrigan dialogue and related dialogue, and they just went with it because it really feels narratively and thematically completely out of place and undoes a lot of the characterization that we had before Kerrigan hatched. But Zaz is a character that seems like he's a bit more important than just being killed off, literally off screen, and then exposited to us that he's dead. Like, that seems very strange. So I guess that's pretty much my coup de grace there. My that's not even the term that I should have been using, but whatever. My take. That's my take. It's not very hot because I got an air conditioner, but it's my air conditioned take. Now we can move on to the Protoss campaign and emphasis on pain. Protoss pain, the fall. The Zerg Overmind has succeeded in invading the Protoss homeworld of Aiur and has embedded itself into the crust of the planet. Now, as the agents of the sinister Overmind spread chaos and destruction across the face of Aiur, the stalwart Protoss defenders prepare themselves for the coming onslaught. First Strike. Citadel of the new Protoss Executor, 2 days after the Zerg invasion.
Entaro Adun, Executor.
N?
I am Judicator Aldaris. I have been sent by the Conclave to serve and counsel you. The former Executor, Tassadar, was commanded to halt the Zerg progress in the Terran sector by burning the infested human worlds. Unfortunately, he disregarded his orders and attempted to destroy the Zerg while sparing the Terrans from the flame. Clearly, Tassadar has failed us. You must not. The Conclave has dictated that our first priority is to strengthen our defenses. You must reinforce our outpost in Antioch and make certain that the province does not fall to the Zerg. Your old comrade, Praetor Phoenix, will meet you there and assist you in this endeavor.
So much is wrong with this briefing, but first I want to point out that in the very first mission of the UED campaign in Brood War, they also have a mission called First Strike. It's not the first mission called First Strike. Can you wrap your fucking heads around that one? Blizzard is that lazy, and yes, I will be ranting about this again when we play that mission in however fucking part 69 or whatever it is. The actual briefing of this mission is pretty shitty. Our introduction to the Judicator and the caste system and blah 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 is just hand-waved away with some exposition instead of being maybe again an opening cutscene where we see some elements of Protoss life. If you're gonna make it important to the plot for whatever reason, you gotta actually present it with purpose instead of just expositing a bunch of information. It's a literal info dump. The only benefit is that it's voice acted by some Diablo motherfucker. I think he's like the prophet or something stupid in Diablo. I don't know what he is. He's some mad lunatic. But so Aldaris expositions us not only what Adjudicator is and what he's there doing there and a bunch of information about Tassadar that we probably should have been able to understand from Jim Raynor's cut interaction with Tassadar in that Biting the Bullet mission that I mentioned at the top of this video. We probably should have gotten the gist of that, and then Aldaris could have just said, due to Tassadar's betrayal of our trust and his own orders, we are placing you as you are now gaining the role of executor or whatever. Something like that would have made a bit more sense and also been more concise and wouldn't have been nearly as much of a fucking exposition info dump. And that's something that I just literally just thought of at the top of my head. So again, every time I'm giving suggestions, unless I say otherwise, assume that it's something I thought up without that much time to put into the thought, because I'm literally like just riffing for most of this stuff. It's not shit that I've got a lot of thought process in. Like when I was talking about the alternative kind of mission for the Zerg Overmind, I didn't really think about the temple thing, but I had thought about the Overmind landing on the crust of the planet, because that's probably what I'm going to do for Hydra. So I was sort of like, well, how would I justify the temple then? And oh, well, maybe it's nullifying the Overmind's ability to land, and that's why you got to blow it up, and that's why it's an objective. Like, again, just fucking quick thought. So a lot of this stuff is just quick thinking. I don't think I'm a fucking exceptionally bright individual. Not that I think I'm an idiot either, but it's just the idea that just one dude is playing through this campaign, and yeah, I've had a lot of time to like internalize a lot of shit about the universe, I suppose, but when I come up with solutions to these problems that I'm observing, and they're riffs that take me 5 seconds to think up and speak out before I go on to the next topic, I think it really is embarrassing. Like, it's really silly that that happens at all. That, somebody didn't think of something better than what I could think of in 5 seconds, basically. And again, I don't want this to sound like I'm sucking my own intellectual cock. I'm literally just saying, like I said, I don't think I'm exceptionally bright. I don't think I'm supremely more intelligent than literally everybody at the Blizzard office from since time immemorial. I'm pretty sure that they had some people who could have been creative if they tried. It's just that they didn't. None of it really shines through in their work, unfortunately. So we get this info dump exposition nonsense. We get a very long-winded explanation of all this stuff, and then Aldaris has the gall to exposition that we have an old friend named Phoenix. Now, Phoenix hasn't been introduced yet. It would have been one thing for Phoenix to just say, Executor, it's been a while since we've last seen each other or whatever. Like, you know, something more natural than that, but something natural enough that it seems like something a real thing would say. I can't say human, obviously, but a real thing would say. And you could dress it up in the Protoss language so it feels natural for Protoss. And then, oh, well, all of a sudden, I guess I know this guy, or this guy knows me. So, like, my character has some connection with this dude. That's all you need to say? You don't need to say your old friend. You don't need to say we're old friends. Like, how are you? Like what? Why? Why are you doing it this way? Why are you brain deadening me? So anyway, we got to meet this guy at Antioch, destroy the Zerg here, and make sure he doesn't fucking sigh. Oh, nice reveal. Thanks. So this is their idea of tutorializing you the Protoss control. Now, Dragoons do control really poorly in this game, obviously. And no, it's not because their hitbox changes in dimension. Day9 decided to spread that fucking idea AIDS, that mind virus of lies, across the fucking galaxy for some reason. It's just that they move at different intervals with each movement frame. Here, we'll show you the Warcraft 3 technique. But, yeah, so really the issue is just that they try to move, and since one of them is moving at 2, like, say 2 distance, and the other is moving at 4 distance, all of a sudden, you know, we're dealing with a situation where the guy behind is trying to move farther. He can't move because there's a guy in front of him moving slower, so he tries to path around. Not the simplest way to explain that, but that is the interaction that's happening. And that happens with a lot of units. It's just that usually they're a little bit more stable than these units. That's also something that happens to the... oh, okay, I didn't trigger the dialogue line so I can finish my thought. That's also something that happens to Goliaths and probably like Ultralisks, as well as Broodlings. Broodlings have that weird jittering where they jerk forward instead of moving forward smoothly, and that will also have the same effect as the Dragoon thing. It's even more obvious there, just so you don't see Broodlings very often. Hi.
What would you ask of me, Executor and Taro-Adun? It is good to see you once more upon the field of battle. Immediately.
Yeah, literally all you have to say is, "It is good to see you again, man."
As you will.
That's all. Thanks for this interview. Didn't we just talk about this?
But without probes, we could not do so. What would you ask of me? As you will.
See ya, Dragoon. Just trying to lead with the Zealot, but, you know. Remember when I said about Protoss units, man? Oh. Oh yeah, good idea. Jesus fucking Zergling. That Zealot button looks really fucked up. I'm used to the updated ones from DF, and let's just say they're a little bit more intelligible. I don't know if they have any more Sunkens. What a disaster. I don't even think they use mutas for defense, they're just pre-placed in a few areas. Why is he stuck? Look at all the pre-placed units, by the way. They don't have another hatchery. Those are all pre-placed units. Alright, so we've already won, in case you couldn't tell. Again, I guarantee you they won't build mutas for defense. Not one and not a dozen. Remember that they have infinite money! Well, not infinite, but like 5,000 or whatever, so... Yep. No other units. Not interested in drones. They don't even bother trying to fight back. And then you can get ready for some more expository dialogue. So this map is basically not a map, and Protoss units allow you to speedrun it way faster than the first Zerg mission by comparison, so it's pretty epic. And I guess I'll run over here with Phoenix to show you guys what I'm talking about. Nice pre-placed muta, nice pre-placed muta. Oh wait, should I show you guys? Well, I can show you it in the map editor.
Executor? No, Executor. Although we two have marched across hundreds of worlds together, I never imagined that we would be fighting on Aiur. The Zerg are indeed worthy foes.
Yeah, whatever you say, Bill Roper, you fucking orc. Oops. Probably open this up in the right profile. Because it's an editor review, baby. So yeah, there's a bunch of pre-placed mutas over here that they could have used. They actually probably would have driven me off if they defense used GG1 Mutalisk. That one line in the script probably would have shaved a lot, well, added a lot to my runtime here. Of course, they only start with 3 Sunkens and 3 drones, and one of them will probably immediately get turned into an extractor. Give you some idea of some of the hard code that's in Blizzard AI. Unless it's melee AI, it automatically tries to build a gas structure over any town that it owns. Just so you know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of 8 mineral fields are the same type because Blizzard tests this stuff all the time. They just look at with their eyes at this stuff all the time. Hey, at least there are no inaccessible mineral fields, huh? Huh? Don't expand to this base. It also has 5 minerals of the same type, by the way. I'm giving Mutas doesn't a lot of homework if he wants to expand all the shitty bases in this fucking playthrough. And that's pretty much it. I mean, this isn't really a map, so I don't think it gets critiqued. Alrighty then. End to the flames. Citadel of the Executor, the following night. Stop saying N.
Your defense of Antioch has restored my faith in the Templar caste. I admit that Tassadar's desertion had shaken my faith.
Indeed, Eldaris. I would hope that the Judicator would put more faith in their Templar brethren.
Tassadar, where have you been?
Silent, Judicator.
Destroyed.
There is no time to waste, and I have much to tell you. As you know, the Zerg the fall of the Terran world of Tarsonis. And though the Conclave bid me return home, I was compelled to remain. A powerful psionic call drew my attention to a remote barren world named Char. Apparently the call was answered by others as well. For upon Char, I encountered those who were once our brethren. The Dark Templar.
Consorting with the Fallen Ones is heresy.
Enough! Hear me, Executor. For I have learned much from the Dark Templar prelate, Zeratul. The Overmind controls its minions through agents called Cerebrates. Strike down the Cerebrates, and the swarms will surely fall.
Executor, Tassadar may be right. If you can keep the Zerg occupied, my force may be able to penetrate their perimeter and slay the abomination.
I pray we can trust you, Tassadar. Already I can sense the taint of the Fallen One's influence on your mind. You must return to Aiur at once.
My concern is for the safety of Aiur, not the judgments of the Conclave. I will return when the time is right.
Man, what a long briefing just to say, kill this Cerebrit. I don't really have that much to say about this. I think it's kind of retarded and slapstick that Tassadar just pops in and says, "Oh, you thought this? XD, here's my psionic communication from light years away." But that's just sloppy Blizzard writing. It doesn't even establish where the fuck this guy is, let alone, like in relation to us, that is, let alone anything else about this fucking existence. So that was just, that's like the first thing that immediately just strikes me the wrong way, or rubs me the wrong way, is the fact that he's like countless light years away, but also he's like, he might still be on Char for all we know. I mean, actually he is. He's in an orbital platform over Char. I know that, I remember that. And that, like, why? Why? Hello? Brain? Don't hurt yourself. Meanwhile, we've got to distract the Zerg while Phoenix gets into position, kill the Zerg Cerebrit, and make sure Phoenix doesn't die. Once again. They give us a timer, they give us a shitty base, they give us 3 probes. I mean, what more could you ask for, man? Maybe some gameplay. I guess we'll go secure an expansion. Poke our head zone. Oh yeah. You can't do nearly as much damage as you could in the previous missions, because there's about 10 million sunken colonies. But I think if we probe up here for a while, we should be okay. Actually, before I do anything, I'm going to go kill the Mongoloids that are up there, because there's some pre-placed borrowed units, I think. This is where we get some more tips as well in this mission. Yeah, they're there. I swear I don't open these maps up beforehand, just so you guys know. Although I think I did open this map up somewhat recently because I was starting to work on the Hydra version of it, so I have some more immediate context as to what's going on. Oh, hi. It's fine, dude. So Phoenix actually tries to, like, that. I didn't really talk about this either, but the dialogue that Phoenix gives us that we didn't explore because we just sped run that last map. He talks about how the Protoss work, and he basically says, "I was going to construct photon cannons, but I couldn't without probes." I mean, that's kind of like a. I don't see the point of saying that because it's kind of self-explanatory that maybe you need workers to build structures. We already know that. But the idea that you know, he says, like, we need to restore power to this gateway is one of the lines that I don't think we got. There was mostly the idea is that the photon cannon line tells you about photon cannons. Meanwhile, this tip here is completely pointless. Like, it's so flaccid an attempt to communicate an idea by comparison that I just don't get it at all. Hey, get up there. There's more borrowed men over here. Oh, you just get enough zealots, so you should be able to bomb through. I don't think you can even do anything over here. Oh yeah, we don't even have advanced. Oh. That's embarrassing for Blizzard. It's okay, one zealot always wins. At this point, I think the most I can hope for is 3 gates. If he's going to build mutas, I should get more dragoons, probably. Maybe he's getting mutas, or maybe these are just pre-placed mutas. I don't know. It looked like that guy was part of an attack force, but it's hard to say. Just start rallying these guys over here. I was gonna hope to grab lug speed, but we don't have access to Citadel yet. All those low HP zealots that just got fucking melted. Alright, it's because there's like 6 sunken colonies over here. And we don't have speed. I guess we could get +1 weapons, that would help. I don't need more pylons for a while. I don't know really if it matters that much. We're gonna get Reavers from Phoenix, but I would like to actually be able to join him. I think if I just hug the top here and pick off the sunken, we might be in business. Guess we'll wait for another full control group or thereabouts. This is a slightly more reasonable mineral field, but definitely these top ones should have been moved around or something. Like, again, you don't need to be super strict and restrictive about it, but something better than what we have is a good idea, generally speaking. Alright. See what we can do here. Oh, never mind. Hello? No, now I need more pylons. I didn't even lose one. So yeah, at this point, we should be able to just bomb in here and smack these guys. It's really important I keep the Dragoons alive, since I have no way to replace them right now. Yeah, we only lost 2 there. I think one of the reasons why our first attack did not work out very well is because I had so many wounded zealots. Oh, I just lost one. It was just to a Hydra. Of course. Alright, so we didn't get super far with it, but we smacked out most of their static defense, so the next wave of units that I'm able to train should be capable of sealing the deal there. And again, it's just a slog, and there's one path to my enemy, and the map is tiny. I could take this base down here. I didn't even really reveal it for you guys, but just have to stay tuned for the editor review for that one, man. Hey. I don't know why they focus so heavily on walking up here. Where's the Hydra that was over here? Oh, there he is. Shield batteries, I feel like, are pretty boring in the default state of things because they're just there for... Oops. They're just there to allow you to turtle. Like you can't really do anything with them that's particularly interesting from a positional standpoint, which is a shame. You know, just about mined out over here, so.
My life for Aiur is so true. I long for combat. Upgrade complete.
I don't know what upgrade that was. Yeah, it's range. There's a lot of Zerglings over here. So just use the Reavers to get rid of the static defense. But I feel like this mission also teaches players bad habits too, though. Consider the idea that you are taught, basically, that you're not supposed to progress into enemy territory like static defense without siege. When you can, you just need a unit advantage. You just need to actually build units. Right? That's the solution. Not fucking relying on siege. Yeah, not even going to bother. And then again, just tool tipping us. And this also teaches players to just wait and rely on spawned in units too, which is pretty unfortunate because I probably already told this story at some point, but when I was really young, I didn't have vision of the Sunken Colony when I first attacked the Cerebrit, and I thought Cerebrits could attack with Sunken Colony tentacles. Because I was attacking with like a Dragoon or a Zealot.
I will remain behind and observe the effects of our attack. Return to the Citadel. I shall notify you when the brood becomes erratic.
Would have been nice to have some sort of immediate result to killing the Cerebrit that maybe had something to, like some sort of impact on the brood. A gameplay demonstration of the impact of losing a Cerebrit. I feel like that would have been better than what we got here. So, especially since this is not the first time, or it won't be the last time rather, that Cerebrits end up getting thrown in here, so. Here's another section for you. Here's another editor review for you. So, 3 probes, a ton of fucking pre-placed supply in terms of like units for us. Oh, I didn't even check the supply counts on the Zerg maps, I just realized. But looking at this, we're looking at 54 pre-placed Zerg supply. You got 4 or 5 pre-placed mutas that I can count so far. 6. Yeah, just 6. The Sunkens over here just punish you for exploring, so that's pretty shitty message to send to players as well. And are completely useless otherwise. It's not like they're in a position to help defend the Cerebrit. Like maybe if they were placed over here, where the jungle patch is and this broken rock is, then you'd be like, oh, cool, we have got like a sunken colony that can actually help. And again, pre-placing anything like this is stupid. You should just have the AI actually build up around that scenario. Like, what if this Cerebrit was in the center of the base or something, and they actually tried to build around it, like if it was where the start location is? What if the Cerebrit was around there, and they just sort of like the Chrysalis in the 3rd End Dominion in the 3rd Zerg mission, and then the AI actually tried to build around it? Well, you know what would be required for that is some way to tell the AI to build static defense or build any structure in a specific spot, aka base layout, which we had to make, and it also would have required AI to actually build dynamically over time, which, of course, never happens in the campaigns. Also, 5 mineral fields that are the same fucking goddamn thing. Jesus Christ. Oh, Town 1 and Town 3. That's pretty cool. Everything's assigned to Town 1, but there is another town over here. I guess that's the I have no idea what that is. I guess that must be the... Town 1 must be the rescuable color? Was he red? Who is player 1? Unused. Oh. No, I guess that's player 3 then. That must be... Yeah, that's a teal star location. Pretty silly. Anyway. I also don't understand why they manually borrow some units. Like, they have some of these Hydras and some of these units over here that are pre-placed in borrowed formation, like with the borrowed flag turned on. The AI automatically does that. What were they trying to do with that? Were they going to have AI units not borrow all the time? Is that like a change that happened later in development? Like, why? What is the significance of that? Layout-wise, this map is atrocious because there's only one path between you and your opponent, and of course your opponent has literally half the map in their immediate domain. With defenses and everything. And the only expansion for you to take is over here. I don't know why they bothered putting minerals over here. Like, again, I'm wondering if maybe they intended the AI to expand at some point early in development, and that's why they have these bases that are, like, in their possession in terms of their sphere of influence. I don't fucking know, man. It's definitely very fucking confusing. All I can think of is that the people who made the maps didn't actually know what the AI was capable of, didn't make the AI, and didn't give a fuck about correcting their map or editing their map after the AI was made, or, you know, to the specification of the AI, or vice versa. I don't know if it was somebody who made the map and somebody else made the AI. I don't even know if that's the case, but that's what it feels like. It feels like people, like entirely different, disconnected individuals who didn't care enough to make something quality, made the map, wrote the script, wrote the cutscene stuff, storyboarded that out, did the, did the AI and all that other junk. Like, it feels like so much of it is just completely unrelated. I don't know, man. Definitely very confusing. And not much to say here, because again, this map basically wasn't a map. Well, I know this was on the shorter end of the videos that I've produced for this series, but we are getting to my hard out in terms of the time. So hopefully this was still sufficient to sate your appetite for StarCraft's analysis and brutal destruction live on stream. Except not live, but I had to say live on stream because it fit with the joke. So hope you enjoyed. We will be back with mission 3 of the Protoss campaign, and I'll go for as long as I can. Maybe I'll be able to finish the whole thing. We'll see. Until then, don't make maps like this, please.